ISIS. What is the other? Obamacare. Millions of people out of work. Millions more underemployed. And of course, the threat of Ebola. And the president himself. Are these the things that voters are concerned about as they flock to the polls today? It looks like there'll be a record turnout for these midterm elections. And as voters vent their anger at the president and his policies, will the Democrats lose big?
Well, the biggest prize up for grabs is control of the Senate, and experts say the Republicans are poised to snatch it from the Democrats. Ephraim Graham has the story.
It's Election Day in America, and voters are lining up to have their say. There are 36 governor's races, 435 House seats are up for grabs, and control of the U.S. Senate. But the biggest message for many Americans is disappointment with the White House.
This is really the last chance for America to pass judgment on the Obama administration and on its policies. The president himself said he's not on the ballot, but his policies are.
Obamacare is arguably the president's single biggest achievement, but Americans don't like it. The latest numbers from an Associated Press poll show only 3 in 10 say they support it, while 48% oppose it.
Obamacare doesn't work.
And Republicans have run more ads against Obamacare than any other issue. About 23,000 in just 2 weeks in October.
It also includes the violation of the most fundamental promise of Obamacare to let people keep their doctor and their insurance if they wanted to keep it.
Many Democrats have been running away from Obamacare, the president and his low approval ratings. But some of them are sticking up for him.
He's taken us from the worst economic crisis that we've faced since the Great Depression through 55 straight months of job growth in the private sector. That is the longest sustained period of job growth in American history.
But voters clearly don't see it that way. An ABC News Washington Post poll shows 7 in 10 Americans rate the nation's economy negatively, and just 28% say it's getting better. The campaigning, talking, and analyzing are now over, and the final decision is up to voters casting ballots here at the polls. And close Senate races in 2 states with early poll closing times could provide an early look at the results. That's New Hampshire and North Carolina. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Well, we'll be watching it as the day unfolds, and tomorrow we'll give you the results of what's there. If it turns out the pundits, what are they going to do? I heard one of our radio commentators saying, well, the liberal media is already set up to spin it as a reaction against Obama, not something for the Republicans, but a reaction against. Well, is it, are we voting against or are we voting for? We're not quite sure. But anyhow, Americans aren't only voting here, they're also being asked to go to the polls in other countries, like Israel. And Americans in Israel have some strong opinion about what President Obama is doing in the Middle East. Here's John Jessup.
Pat, Americans living in Israel started voting in midterm elections before today. CBN News visited one center helping Americans to cast their ballots, and we asked them what issues are important to them and how they see the current state of U.S.-Israeli relations. Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
I Vote Israel is a group that encourages Americans living here to register and vote in U.S. elections.
We've helped them, inform them how to fill out their ballot. We haven't chosen the candidates for them. That's their business. But on the other hand, we're here to lend a hand and make sure that they participate in the election.
Americans in Israel have a unique vantage point, living in a Western-style nation in the Middle East, surrounded by enemies, something the United States often doesn't understand. We ask Americans here why they're voting and what's important to them.
First of all, I care about America, and second of all, I think that the elections are going to not only influence American citizens, but also the entire world.
Israel's security is important, the threat of a nuclear Iran and the more proximate threats, but I also care deeply about what is happening in the United States. So when I vote with the interests of both countries at heart.
One of the most important things is to get a balanced government in the United States, to not have Obama calling all the shots.
The greatest concern is the faltering relationship between America and Israel.
Some say those relations are faltering because President Obama doesn't understand the Middle East or history.
He's been very naive thus far. He's been demanding concessions from Israel time after time and not demanding anything, not receiving anything in return from the Palestinians.
We have been a true and trusted friend, ally to the United States. And we have been true blue, we've been trusted, we've held back our fire.
This is not about anti-Israel, this is not about Israel, this is about anti-Semitism.
I've made the joke many times that Obama never had any experience with foreign policy, so he had the CIA send him a list of the countries in the world in order of how friendly they are to the United States, and then he hung it on the wall backwards by accident.
And does God figure into the equation in the Middle East?
I absolutely believe that he does figure, and I think faith, certainly for Jews, but also for Christians, is really important, all of the challenges that we are facing today.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
A recent poll showed 3 out of 4 Israelis don't trust President Obama's foreign policy in the Middle East, and only 25% called him a true friend of Israel. Pat, those are some pretty strong feelings there.
They are. As someone was just saying to me, the perspective changes dramatically when you're living in a country that's under the gun and surrounded by enemies, and you're not just given a dose of the liberal media day after day after day, applauding the president and congratulating him on some of the things that he does. So in Israel, they see it more starkly, and that's their response. John.
The Islamic State terrorists shot and killed 36 Sunni Muslim tribesmen, women, and children in public Monday. Locals warn ISIS will massacre even more in the days ahead unless the Iraqi government helps people still trapped in an area in Iraq's Anbar province. The public killings come after a report that ISIS had killed more than 300 people in the western part of the same province. ISIS has also claimed responsibility for 2 bombing attacks against Shiite Muslim pilgrims that killed 23 people in Baghdad Sunday. The group boasted that it carried out the bombings despite tight security measures around what it called the Shiites', quote, biggest infidel event. Pat?
This ISIS, ladies and gentlemen, they are butchers, they are barbarians. Words fail me to describe who they are and what they are. But what we do know is the President of the United States was briefed repeatedly about what was happening in Syria. He knew that the so-called moderates were not winning. He knew that ISIS was coming on the scene. He was told by the CIA, and if he didn't read his briefings or didn't listen to those who were briefing him, it's certainly not the fault of the American people. It's the fault of the president. And I think in today's voting, people are going to be holding him responsible for that. But he's not on the ballot. But he said his policies are. But ladies and gentlemen, whatever the president says or doesn't say, I want you to know that the truth is ISIS is following the game plan that was set forth in a book called the Quran, and the writings about the Quran in something called the Hadith. They're clear, unmistakable, and although there were some peaceful passages in the Quran, the Arab scholars, Islamic scholars say, well, there is something called abnegation. They were abnegated by subsequent writings which were more bellicose. We have had hundreds of thousands, several hundred thousand, 265, 300, I don't know what the numbers, it's a lot of people, want this book called Islam, Religion of Peace or War. We'll give it to you free. You might as well be informed, and this is about as quick and easy a way to be informed about the situation as I know about. It's all here. It's carefully edited by Islamic scholars, people who speak Arabic and are familiar with the Quran. We'll send it to you free, 1-800-759-0700. You might as well be informed because you're going to hear about this over and over and over again in your news. Well, another move is underway to save the life of a person who's under torture, sentenced to death, and John has that report for us.
Pat, that's right. You're talking about Asia Bibi, the Christian mother of 5 who's been sentenced to death on charges of blasphemy. A high court recently upheld a previous decision to execute her, but Bibi's family, along with human rights activists, are still fighting to set her free. As Gary Lane reports, Bibi has one more chance for acquittal.
When I met with Asia Bibi's family in late summer 2011, they were hoping and praying she would return home by Christmas. That was more than 3 years ago. Now comes news that the Pakistani High Court has upheld Asia's conviction and death sentence for alleged blasphemy against the Muslim prophet Muhammad. And that has Asia's family very upset. Todd Nettleton is with the Voice of the Martyrs.
When this hearing was finally held, I think their hopes were finally there's going to be justice. I think of Asia's daughters in particular. Finally, our mom is going to be free. She's going to come home to us. And all of those hopes were dashed. This was a very difficult day for Asia, for her husband Ashik, and for their daughters.
When I met Asia's husband Ashik, he told me he was proud of his wife.
Asia never left her faith. She is faithful, and she never denied her faith.
And the evidence against her was tenuous, says Nettleton. He believes the High Court judges did not overturn Asia's conviction because they were likely threatened by militant Islamists.
We know there have been threats by radical Muslims against them. We know there were about 25 mullahs that attended the hearing, were sitting in the courtroom, and about 2,000 more outside the courthouse, bringing the message to bear to the judges, hey, we're watching how you rule on this case. We know who you are. We know where you live. You're not out of our reach. And I think that pressure was reflected in the fact that the verdict was upheld.
Ashik said his wife's imprisonment and conviction came of no surprise because Christians are a small, persecuted minority in Pakistan's Muslim-dominated society.
It is written in the Bible, "In my name you will face persecution, and people will blame you and curse you." And we are facing that.
Bibi has one more chance for acquittal. Her case is now on appeal to the Pakistan Supreme Court. Nettleton says even if the court eventually frees her from prison, Asia's life will still be in danger.
She's not safe there. There is a mullah who has already issued a death reward for killing her. She will need, at the very minimum, to relocate to a safe place within Pakistan, and more likely her and her family will have to leave the country for their safety.
So for now, one last chance. The final Supreme Court decision could take months, if not years. And just like they did 3 years ago, her daughters remain faithful, no matter what the eventual outcome.
We know God is alive. We know He is with us. He will be with us forever.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thanks, Gary, for that report. Pat, another example of Christian persecution around the world.
You know, I'm appalled by this, aren't you? I mean, I've been to Pakistan on a couple of occasions. I have done business dealings with some of the people. They were educated, many of them, the top guys are educated in Christian schools. They have a British form of military. They were very much anglicized, if I can use that term. And yet to see this fanaticism breaking out in Pakistan. But the thing is, Pakistan is loaded with nuclear weapons. They have nuclear weapons, and you know, the H.K. Khan group were giving away or selling secrets, nuclear material to North Korea and others, and A.K. Khan. The thing is, we give or have given billions of dollars in aid to Pakistan, and to allow this kind of persecution is just unbelievable. And this poor girl was out there working, and they were talking about who got water, and they say she blasphemed the prophet. She did no such thing. She did no such thing. It was a trumped-up charge based on hearsay, and they're going to kill her for that. They're going to sentence her to death for that. It shows how fanatic that religion is. What are they scared of? What are they scared of? You know, you can say nasty things about Allah and you get away with it, but if you say anything about Muhammad, why? Because his claim to fame is so tenuous. It is so tenuous, those revelations he had and all this other stuff, so tenuous. And the Muslims are so scared that if anybody really gets to him, that it'll destroy their religion. That's why they're guarding him so carefully, because they know it's based on a group of lies. Well, anyhow, I want to again push this book. You need the book. The book talks about where he kept his revelation, how it came to him. what his then wife said about his revelation, what he says in the Quran about himself and others. And I want to correct something I said. I used the term abnegation. It was abrogation. I got a couple of words wrong.
You're allowed.
Am I allowed? You know the difference?
We knew what you meant.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure abnegation and abrogation, but yeah, whatever it was, I got tongue-tied. But the scholars say whatever Muhammad wrote early on when he was trying to be nice to the Jews, he canceled later on, and that is abrogation. Okay. Give you this book. You need it. Islam, religion of peace or war. You want it. Find out why they're doing the crazy things they do. John.
Pat, the top U.S. commander for NATO is warning Moscow is effectively working to move its border westward into Ukraine. General Philip Breedlove painted an increasingly grim picture of the West's deteriorating relationship with Russia. He says Moscow is discussing plans to move aircraft into the region, including possible tactical nuclear weapons. But he adds that so far, he hasn't seen any indication Moscow will deploy such weapons. He says Russia's actions are forcing the West to beef up military capabilities. Pat?
I said it before, I say it again. Putin is a sociopath. He is slightly nuts. And what is happening is when you get a guy who's nuts in charge of a vast nuclear arsenal, it's very, very dangerous. Now, you see, the Ukrainians had nukes. They had tactical nukes, and they gave them all up because of the promises of stability from NATO and others. We're going to defend them. And now we're letting them twist in the wind, and Obama doesn't seem to care anything much about treaty obligations. But you've got those Baltic states that used to be part of the Soviet orbit, and Putin is eyeing those, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, et cetera. He's already taken over the Crimea. We didn't have much to say about that, but he got a port down there on the Black Sea that he wanted very badly and took it away from the Ukrainians. And now he wants more of the Ukraine, and the chances are he wants to undermine the Ukraine. And we're standing idly by and letting him get away with it. We need to send them large quantities of weapons and to make it absolutely clear that the stability or the sovereign integrity of the Ukrainian nation is at stake, and we're not going to allow the Russians to violate it. But if we don't do anything, and we've got a president who doesn't like to do much, it's going to result in Putin's territorial ambitions. And once he gets, you don't make a wolf live at peace because you keep feeding him little babies and hopefully that he'll be nice because you give him a meal. He's going to want another and another and another. And Putin is like a mad, rabid wolf. John.
Pat, back here at home, more cold weather is coming later this week from the Midwest to the east after an early winter storm slammed the eastern part of the country, bringing record snow and ice. Powerful winds and blowing snow made for treacherous driving in Maine, where up to a foot of snow fell. Frozen power lines cut off electricity to around 135,000 residents, rather. Parts of the South are also feeling the deep cold, with record lows in Florida. Over the weekend, Columbia, South Carolina experienced its earliest snowfall on record, and parts of Tennessee got over 22 inches of snow. Winter doesn't officially kick off until December 21st. And Pat, it looks like we need to brace ourselves if this is at all signs of what to expect this winter.
Well, everybody knows what it is. It's global warming. Can't you tell? I mean, ask John Kerry. It's the greatest threat facing mankind is this warming stuff. Tell those people in Tennessee and South Carolina that they're victims of global warming. Terry, have you got the warning out for them?
I guess so. I mean, that's unbelievable, isn't it? 22 inches, my goodness.
Well,
wow.
It's going to get colder. We're going to have one of the most, if the Farmer's Almanac is wrong, this is going to be one of the most intense winters in decades. It's going to be really, really cold. So I don't know if it's time to get your long johns bought, but if you could get a bargain price on them, I recommend you get a few pair.
And a good shovel.
And a good shovel.
An American Christian detained in North Korea for 6 months says he intentionally left his Bible in a nightclub in hopes it would get to the underground church. North Korea released Jeffrey Fow last month. Fow was taken into custody in April after authorities discovered a Bible with his name in it.
brought an English Korean Bible with me on the tour with the hopes of getting in the hands of the underground Christian church, which was clearly against DPRK law, but being a Christian believer, I was trying to carry out the Christian, the Great Commission of Jesus Christ, and carry the gospel to all corners of the earth.
Val says in hindsight he wouldn't take such a risk again. A case involving Jerusalem has gone to the Supreme Court. The court heard arguments Monday over whether Americans born in Jerusalem can list Israel as their country of birth on their passports. The status of Jerusalem is one of the most contentious issues between the Israelis and Palestinians, and the U.S. has tried to avoid taking sides. The court's ruling will be closely watched in the Middle East. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website, including all of today's election news at cbnnews.com.